Metroid, a community retrospective and look for the future. Anyone here like Metroid?
I'm a fan.
Me too. Hey, we should do a panel.
We should.
We'll very quickly introduce ourselves before we actually start talking about Metroid, and talk about who we are.
Look, it even says who we are. That's a good coincidence.
It's a good transition.
Who am I?
Yeah. This is me. I'm Elias. I'm the human in the photo, not the coffee cup or the dog or the meme. I started MetroidHQ back in the day, and the charity marathon we do is an extension of that, MHQ-thon. I play a lot of randomizers, developer of one of the trackers there for Metroid Prime. I'm a very slow speedrunner as well, and I like dogs. I also have one.
Anyone here like dogs?
Shout out to dogs.
Shout out to dogs.
Nice, nice. Well, I like dogs, but I also like cats. I'm Doughboy, or you can call me Scott. I've been streaming for a long time now. I used to be young streaming, and now I'm old streaming. I'm a competitive level Super Smash Brothers player, and I know it's probably a shocker, but I main Samus. I've been in the esports broadcast production industry for a while, and so I've been in the Smash tournament space doing broadcasts there for a while too. I am a bassist for a band called Mother Fungus. Any psych rock fans? And as you can see, I like cats. That's my cat Mav, and she's very cute and fluffy. I also did cosplay once or twice. As you can see, they're beautiful pieces of art.
My dog's name is Pianchi, if anyone gets that reference.
One person gets it, and it's him.
I gotta say, I didn't know the name of your band until I saw this slide, and I love the name of your band.
Thank you. But speaking of actual cosplay, if you want to see some of that.
Okay. I'm Jen. I go by Space Babe Cosplay on Instagram. I've been in the Metroid cosplay community since about 2017 or 2018. I like making armor and doing Metroid-related art. Obviously, some non-Metroid-related art up there, too. I've done a little bit of streaming for Metroid Database for their October marathon last year. Wait.
Something like that.
Last year. Okay. Metroid Database, he's like, you got to finish the games, Jen. You got to finish them. So I had to do them under duress. And I also like dogs and any fuzzy creature, basically. So
Fuzzy creatures are pretty great.
I'm not nervous at all.
And lastly,
And I'm Ed. I've been a Metroid fan since the womb, and I say no really because like my mom was pregnant with me, and her and my dad were playing NES Metroid, making maps, writing down passwords, the whole nine. So I've loved it forever.
Can they adopt me?
What's that?
Can they adopt me?
Ed can adopt you.
Oh, well.
Yeah, maybe.
works.
I'm a high-level Metroid Dread speedrunner, primarily glitchless, no major glitches. We'll get to that later. I was featured on GDQ in 2023. You may have seen me there, racing another community member manager. I like fighting games, and my dog is a goober. His name is Dax, which is a Star Trek reference, so enjoy that. And I love my partner.
Aww.
All right.
That's enough about us. Let's talk about Metroid, specifically starting off with the origins. How did Metroid get started? Well, it got started like this. Very first game in the series had a pretty basic premise. This was just Nintendo experimenting, trying to combine the side-scrolling aspect of Mario with the sort of open-world progression-based Zelda style. And we got a pretty cool space game that was pretty generic, where space bounty hunter Samus goes to alien planet to eliminate dangerous galactic threat. It was a pretty, straightforward NES game, but it had a twist at the ending where actually Samus was something we'll talk about after this slide. I forgot this one was here.
Me too.
Stay tuned. Many mechanics that are now staples of the Metroid series actually started here as ways to make the game actually work. So the Morph Ball was created to avoid a crawling animation, right? Why can't Metroid crawl, the meme? Well, it's because they needed a simpler way to get in tight spaces. Likewise, the ice beam was chosen as Metroid's weaknesses because when a bunch of Metroids are flying on a screen, it's easier to just freeze them and save memory in place.
The lag was serious.
Yeah. Anyway, it had a plot twist at the end as well, where it was revealed, contrary to all marketing material about the game, because no one told the localization team, that Samus was in fact a woman.
Spoilers.
Spoilers, by the
Strong
way, for
women.
anyone who has not played any Metroid game ever and seen any marketing sense. This was pretty significant at the time. She's considered to be the first playable human woman in a mainstream video game. This game came out in 1986. Kind of paved the way for like Lara Croft and you know all of that stuff that I can't talk too much about because I'm a man. This also was an early adopter about incentivizing speedrunning. It provided better endings to players who completed the game faster. Better in this case being, you know, yeah.
Y'all know. Y'all know.
So that was Metroid. That was the first and only game for a while, the end. That was not meant to be a series or franchise at all until, of course, someone decided to make a sequel, this time for the Game Boy, 6 years later, or 5 years later, excuse me, in 1991 when it was first released here in America. This was another excuse to experiment with a lot of the high-tech at the time Game Boy features. They wanted to make a Game Boy game that was almost on parity about what the NES could do, as well as do stuff like utilize a save battery for save stations. No more typing in and remembering passwords. It did have a limitation in that there was no color, right? So in the original Metroid game, her Various suit was denoted by a different color. You couldn't have that, so that's when she got her shoulders for the Various suit.
Big old pauldrons.
Very, very exciting time. It also introduced some new lore via some Metroid evolutions that you see there. So you can start to see the ball rolling here with Metroid slowly becoming a series. And in fact, the ending, spoiler, by the way, I guess we should say, we're probably going to spoiler most
Yeah,
Metroid
that's
games.
true. Sorry, spoiler alert, by the way.
The baby Metroid, which Samus keeps and takes back to the Federation at the end, was sort of an emotional ending to the game and actually inspired development for a pretty quick follow-up on the Super Nintendo this time, which everyone mostly loves, Super Metroid. The now producer of the game actually chose to make this game because he was inspired by that story and wanted to continue it, the story of the baby Metroid, against the wishes, actually, of the general producer at the time.
And it might be obvious, but that little Metroid there is the same one that's
Oh,
there. So
that makes
You're telling me the
I thought
baby
you
is
did that on
canon?
purpose,
That
but
makes
all right. It was on purpose.
It
Own
was,
it.
it
Okay.
was all on purpose, yeah. Yeah, we talked about that already. This was really the Metroid game that solidified the Metroidvania formula. It had a very good progression-based map design, and they, I guess, didn't do too much QA and testing about the physics and stuff. And so the oversights led to a lot of good sequence breaking, which filled into the map design. And so because of that, because of the story itself, because of a lot of reasons for this game, it remains one of the most beloved Metroid games even to this time, if not most beloved video games. It's a classic people think of. It was a super excellent follow-up to the first two games, and then they stopped. That was it.
Yeah.
For 8 years, they gave way to the first great Metroid drought.
TM.
But, you know, that break allowed the community to use those first three games to do some cool stuff, which we're going to talk about, starting with
Speedrunning. So, show of hands, anybody familiar with speedrunning? Metroid speedrunning, Castlevania speedrunning?
Yeah.
A lot of you, nice, awesome. So what the heck even is speedrunning? Most of you know. it's going fast. So in the Metroid games, we want to get Samus to run and space jump and just climb her way to the end of the game as fast as possible. So it's built directly into the games. Elias kind of touched on this a minute ago. It's pretty neat, right? So you get the rewards based on your completion time. So in Metroid 1, there was an ending that I think a lot of us probably saw. Can anybody guess the time threshold for this ending? Just shout it out. He knows. It's over 10 hours in Nestroid.
We got a gamer in the crowd.
We got a gamer.
A
One
game
gamer.
master, some might say.
Some kind of captain, I don't know. So in Metroid 2, we had this ending at 3 to 5. I actually like the worse ending better in Metroid 2 because she's running and it's really cool. And here she's just standing. 3 to 5 hours. Super Metroid, I think this one was also 3 to 5, if I'm not mistaken, or 3 to 10.
Wow. Did you make this slide?
What's that?
Didn't you make this slide? You
Yeah, I mean,
Not a gamer.
I'm not good at Super Metroid. I'm good at Dread. And then in Fusion, they also added a completion threshold for item collection, which was really cool. Got you a ton of different ending arts of like Samus and her childhood years and all that. So speedrunning is just a huge part of the Metroid community. So those completion-based, those time-based rewards kind of fueled that initial desire for people to go fast, you know? It's kind of impossible to overstate the impact that Metroid has had on speedrunning as a whole, and on game design even, with Super Metroid really pioneering a lot of things in terms of backtracking through areas, getting power-ups and all that good stuff. 3D and 2D Metroid games, which we'll touch on those games later, also have huge speedrunning communities, all of which are so welcoming and wonderful. If you have any kind of interest in speedrunning, I very much encourage you to check it out. There's a lot of routes and different glitch categories that you can choose from, which leads me to something that some of you might be like thinking right now when I mention the term glitches. Some people think they're cheating. I have a very succinct response for you. They're not. They're really cool, actually. And we're going to showcase a couple for you here. This first clip is from the current any % Metroid Prime world record in 44 minutes by TRR. TRR is using some crazy clipping stuff. I'm not super familiar with Prime, but I know that there's a lot of out of bounds. You jump on the geography.
This one in particular is called Early Artifact of Newborn. It allows you to get the only phase-on suit required item before phase-on suit by going out of bounds here.
So that way you just don't have to backtrack that entire zone. You can just leave. Goodbye. Physics are a suggestion. Speaking of physics and walls being suggestions, this next clip is from the current Metroid Dread any % unrestricted world record in 41:08 by Satorha. So he's using axis skew to run towards the camera, store a shine spark, and then do a little dance and zoom on through the wall. The door underneath him there was a wave beam door. He doesn't have wave beam yet, so just go through the wall. It's fine. We don't need those.
Sounds like cheating to me.
It's not. It's awesome.
It takes a lot of skill to set up and do all of this.
Yeah. So why speedrun? Personal fulfillment. There's a lot of, breaking your own records and stuff is really cool. There's a huge speedrunning community for any game. There's tournaments that happen. There's amazing events like GDQ. Stuff like that is why I'm fortunate enough to be able to be here on this panel. The competition aspect is amazing. I love it, both competing with myself and fellow community members. And it's just fun to go fast. Like, come on, who doesn't like going fast? So I was actually speaking with a community member recently, Charlotte, and she said this: a speedrun accomplishment harkens back to the pure and unrestrained feeling of beating a game as a child and feeling that pure, unfiltered catharsis. And I could not agree more. I asked her permission to say that. She was like, yes, please do. And that's a screenshot from AGDQ 2023 during the race. It was an amazing time. And then you also have to fill the onerous gap between mainline Metroid titles. They don't come a lot, so you got to do something, right? But most importantly, you get to do some really cool speed keeps. So I'm going to set up this clip a little bit here. This is a trick in Metroid Dread that's required in the glitchless category called glitchless early ice. You have to do crazy stuff with a speed keep in order to get across like a 10-block gap of water, because you can't do an easy glitch. You have to do this monstrosity instead. It's a lot of fun, though. This is the setup. Keep the speed through the tunnel, unmorph, Emmy's chasing you, get up on the wall, keep that shine spark, and then right across the gap. If you don't want to speedrun after that, I don't know what to tell you.
You say the Emmy's chasing you. I don't see an Emmy anywhere.
In the business, we call this schmoving.
Schmovin'.
What business?
The schmovement business. All right, so
Time for a debate.
Oh,
Very hotly debated topic in
Yes,
the community. Save the animals, save the frames.
so
What do you guys think?
quick show of hands.
who knows what this means?
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's go with that first. Anyone know what this means? Okay.
Yeah.
Good chunk.
Out of these people who are raising their hands, who likes to save the animals?
Come on.
Who likes to let them die and save the frames?
Monsters.
You're outnumbered. I'm sorry.
You're
What about all you?
monsters.
Save the
Depends.
frames. I'm a speedrunner, man.
Save the frames.
They're so cute, though.
I save the
They're
animals.
just little guys.
I save the animals.
They're just little
I
guys.
got fast enough at that section, so I could save the animals.
Okay, that's reasonable.
see.
Wow, you're such
That's
a
very
hero,
kind of you.
Elias. All right,
I know.
Moving on.
Not everyone has the ability or skill to go fast in a lot of these games, and so another way people filled the time was by doing ROM hacks. They're able to take these ROMs and customize them in a way. They're basically making brand new games using the existing engine and assets. It was a very creative way to sort of make the experience new and fresh, and a lot of these ROM hacks have even been featured in events like GDQ. Because they're just so different, so creative, and familiar enough that people who like Super Metroid, for instance, want to see a Super Metroid-based ROM hack. So they also paved the way for more stuff we'll talk about later as well. Something we did get as well in the 90s during this drought, everyone was very excited for, was Metroid 64. Came out in 1999 under the video game title of
Super Smash Bros. Look, see? It's Metroid.
She's right there.
So, yeah, 1999 rolls around. There hadn't been a Metroid game in a while, but we saw Samus in a video game for the first time in a few years. And so, as a Metroid fan, this would be like a good sign, like, oh, look, they still care about Metroid. Samus is in there. She's got the grapple beam. She's got bombs. She's got charge shot. They added a stage into the game, and so it's like, all right, cool. There's some recognition there, and I guess subjectively she was a fun character to play as well, but that leads to... Everyone got that, right? We're good? 2 years later, Melee came out on GameCube, and Samus is back, and hey, look, it's Ridley. Ridley's in the game, in the cutscene, and he's stealing the last Metroid, just like Super Metroid.
Remember that?
Kraid's there as well in the Brinstar stage, and Samus gets kind of a few new moves, gets some missiles, homing missiles and super missiles, which I just processed. There's no homing missiles in any of the other games. I mean, not at that point.
Not at that point.
So they're creating new Metroid lore that gets used later in the games, clearly.
This is canon, by the way. Canon, yeah.
And, yes, as a dev, I can tell you. And any Melee fans in the crowd? Show of hands. Anyone like to press buttons really fast? Mm-hmm. Just as a side note, first of all, I don't know if you've ever seen these before, but Samus has some very bizarre glitches, basically, in Melee that sets up for some insane things in tournament play that people try to pull off once in a while. And this game really cemented the Smash series kind of as like what we all know it as now, is like this big, really well-known, fun-to-play fighting game, both for literal babies up to, grown men who are 45
Literal
sweating on a
babies.
stage trying to beat each other.
Yeah, thank you, Samus, said Captain N, which was also a thing that happened in the 90s.
Come up. I'm making you do it.
Samus was a main
gotta do it.
character. We actually have a captain in like Apocalypse cosplayer in the front row. It's fun. Yeah, this happened. Samus was kind of a main character. Mother Brain was a villain.
Sure was.
The 90s were a wild time. Put it to you that way. They thought they knew their audience at the time. But this drought finally ended with the surprise double feature of 2002, where we got not one, but two new Metroid games on the same day. And one of them was even marketed beforehand, but not this one. Metroid Fusion was Metroid 4. It was the direct sequel to Super Metroid. It introduced a new enemy, X-Parasite, and they really apparently didn't like everyone sequence breaking Super Metroid, so they made it very linear. It also introduced the SAX, which is a very frightening, terrifying thing that was a mechanic they sort of used later on.
I didn't even mention it.
Yeah, there is a secret message if you manage to do the one vaguely intended sequence break.
That's basically impossible for a casual
It's
player.
tough.
It's so
It's
hard.
very tough. So it's another sign that they were thinking about stuff. And by the way, we are going to have a sort of Q&A towards the end of the panel if you have any fun facts or stuff like that. The other game that came out was Metroid Prime. Anyone heard of Metroid Prime? No one? Really? Okay. So this actually was not a sort of sequel at the same time. They chose to make this take place between Metroid and Metroid 2. The reason being they wanted to mess with Metroids a lot. Hard to do that after Samus genocided them all. This was more of a callback to the Super Metroid design. Both of the developers of these games had basically Super Metroid to work off of. And because of that map design and also some oversights in physics, it allowed for more innovations like sequence breaking and speedrunning. We saw a more extreme one earlier. Also introduced Phazon, which ended up being heavily used in the series going forward for Metroid Prime games. And of course, the elephant in the room is that this was the first 3D Metroid. It was in first person. When it was revealed that they were going to take that route for consoles, it was a big risk. Not everyone was happy to hear about it, but for the most part, it landed pretty well. Retro Studios was eventually up to the task. They had a storied history of making this game, but ended up making a pretty solid one. It was bestseller, game of the year. It introduced the series to a new generation that had largely played basically only 3D games on like N64 and PlayStation up to that point. And it really ushered in something that we'll talk about after we debate really quick, because I got ahead of myself again. 2D Metroid versus 3D Metroid. We'll do a show of hands again really quick. Who likes 2D Metroid or side-scrolling Metroid better? Okay. And 3D Metroid, first person? It's almost even split.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I like 2D, but I like them both. I think they're both really, really good. 2D is my favorite, though.
Yeah.
I like being in Samus's shoes, like having her POV. So that's why I like the 3D better. But
Shocker.
in terms of comparing them, though, I always say it's like apples and oranges. The gameplay's so different.
Yeah.
So.
I genuinely love both. I think the Metroid series would be lacking if we didn't have both.
I agree. Yeah, I'm singing the same song. I probably would gravitate towards 3D just because Metroid Prime was actually the game that got me into the series personally, but Fusion was out at the same time too, so I was like, oh, there's two of them, it's great. At this point, it's almost hard to have one without the other. I like them both a lot as well. Like I said, Metroid Prime, facilitated by Metroid Fusion and past sales, it made things go really well. Sales were up with Metroid. It got really popular, which then ushered in the golden age of Metroid. No trademark on this one.
Feel free to use it.
So this kind of gave rise to some online communities, right? At this point, the internet was kind of in full swing. People had DSL connections. It was very exciting. So forums, subreddits, and eventually when social media came around, social media communities, YouTube channels, all began to form these sort of Metroid communities where people could go online and geek out about Metroid when they tried to talk about it to their IRL friends, and they just didn't care. It's definitely not my own personal experience at all.
No, mine either.
From these online communities where people could just gather and talk about and be creative about their favorite stuff, gave way to a lot of different things. One thing actually being artwork and fan art and stuff. Here are three that you actually...
Oh, yeah, I pulled these just to showcase some of our group members' art. The Metroid cosplay community oftentimes has like a fan art Friday, or we used to when I was less lazy about posting. So you'd pick an artist to feature on Friday. The first one that you see is Illuminoth, which I don't think the moth people get enough love.
They don't.
So that was done by one of our members, Gioia. She does great ink work. The middle one is just one I kind of found randomly searching the group as a Kraid Pokemon mashup, and I'm
Kraid's
sorry.
voice.
Love
I
Kraid's
don't
voice.
remember who did it, and that's why you should watermark your art. And the last one is done by our group member, Mimi, and she does really great, like, Samus fine art. Like, she'll be saying, hey, I'm doing a Samus painting, and then she posts it the next day, like it's done. She's so fast. But I had to put that one in because Crockemeyer also needs love.
We love
The best.
Crockemeyer here.
He did nothing wrong.
He did not. He was defending his home. I'll die on that hill.
Same.
Another thing that sort of spawned from that, as well as the ROM hacks that happened earlier as tools evolved, is that people were able to make their own, quote, like original, actual fan games of Metroid, just brand new Metroid games. Usually it was a bunch of, at least at that point in time, teenagers, young adults getting together, not too much experience in actual game development, just cobbling together. So a lot of them were short and sweet. A lot of them were total disasters. Please don't ask me about the one I tried to make in 2004. And some were worked on for a very long time and were released to actually such acclaim, Nintendo was like, please stop. Because, well, a lot of reasons. But it is, in fact, a legal sort of very gray area if you choose to go down this route and try to make one. But it is an expression of love that the communities have to try and make these games, because they are basically making what they want to see because they like the Metroid series so much.
AM2R is really good.
Yeah, it's still supported too. So during the golden age of Metroid, we were basically had it as good as Zelda fans at this point. We were getting a new game almost every year. Starting in 2004, we have Metroid Zero Mission, very first remake, very overdue remake of the first Metroid game, which was showing its age at this point. So it added all the quality of life stuff. It embraced sequence breaking. It had a lot of developer-intended sequence breaks. It also included a brand new area, an epilogue, and a little section with the introduction, actually, of Zero Suit Samus, which was a nod to the Justin Bailey from the first one, as Jen is now demonstrating. It's like, it's almost like a Justin Bailey suit, Zero Suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got going on?
It's
Yeah.
my
Yeah. So it's a
lazy
hybrid of
full
both.
coverage, Justin Bailey.
Can you explain what Justin Bailey is?
Justin Bailey is
It's a passcode.
the password system in the original Metroid. You could type a password to save your progress, but there are also custom passwords. Justin Bailey was one that you could type in to start in the suitless thing, which you would normally have to beat the game for. So after that, we finally get the long-awaited, and by long I mean 2 years later,
Back when long.
sequel. Like I said, we had it as good as Zelda fans. Sequel to Metroid Prime, Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. It was a return to 3D. It introduced some new mechanics. Some received well, not others. I experimented a little bit with this. It kept what came to be known as the Prime sub-series going strong. It introduced Dark Samus, who would show up later as well. And multiplayer. This is the first Metroid game that had multiplayer. It was local only, PvP. It was basic and rushed, but it was a good start into sort of multiplayer for Metroid. We then have some spin-offs that we're going to cover. Metroid was doing really well at this point, and so Nintendo decided that with the launch of their brand new mobile console, the successor to the GBA, they would introduce or include a demo of a very not yet finished game that was coming out, Metroid Prime Hunters. It had a few little stages, and it was notable because it actually included Metroids, whereas the actual game did not. Metroid Hunters is the only game without actual Metroids in it. So that was a nice little thing. Metroid Prime Pinball actually came out before Hunters full game eventually did. This is also known as Metroid Prime Demastered. It retells the story of Metroid Prime in pinball format. Really the first true side game where it's like clearly not canon or anything. And to this day remains the ultimate airplane game.
It's true.
This is actually a really fun and good pinball game. Like,
It really is.
I like to play it just when I'm idle and remember that I have it.
That leads us to Metroid Prime Hunters, which came out shortly after. And it is kind of a spin-off game, but it does have canonical elements too. This game introduced several other bounty hunters, all going for a similar bounty, as brings up in the story. Most notably Silux, who's on the right here, who we'll be seeing later. We didn't know this at the time. We thought they were just kind of a bunch of random dudes, but turns out there's maybe more to it. And this brought back multiplayer and actually had not only local PvP, but it had online PvP. And I'm very curious, show of hands, anyone play online PvP back in the day?
Couple, yeah. Nice.
Good enough. Good
These
enough.
5 people know.
Yeah.
I missed the boat.
It's probably one of the best PvP experiences I've had in my life.
That you can't have anymore. Sorry.
It was incredible, and I'm crossing my fingers that maybe there's another game that they'll put some PvP in. It had leaderboards, it had very active forums. It was a surprisingly huge community, just very spread out everywhere because it was online. And it's an old game, and it was DS, so you don't see it talked about too much, but it has a special place in my heart.
We had the third game for the DS, Metroid Dread, 2006.
Yep.
Right?
You guys remember that?
I think, please.
Maybe.
Nintendo Power told me it was going to happen, so clearly. Yeah, Metroid Dread is out now, but it was originally planned to be the Metroid 5 follow-up 4 years later after Fusion on the DS, but technical limitations prevented it from reaching full development, so they just kind of shelved it until they had the bandwidth and tech to make it. But people saw it listed upcoming for the DS alongside games such as Twilight Princess and Metroid Prime 3. Metroid Prime 3, by the way, developers did not know anything about development of this game and saw it just like the rest of us did in a magazine, so they decided to put in a little Easter egg. Yeah, it's totally almost done. It's happening soon, we promise.
No one was upset.
Which leads us into Metroid Prime 3. Not on the Nintendo DS. This was on the Wii. This was the conclusion of the trilogy for first 3 main Metroid Prime games. It ended Samus's fate with Dark Samus and as well as Phase On. It was notable. It was first widescreen game. It wasn't HD yet. We wasn't quite up to snuff yet. And it was the first one that included voice acting. Not with Samus yet, but with a lot of NPCs and characters there. It also really leaned hard into the Wii's motion controls. It had a kind of faux dual analog thing going on with the pointer and the what was the side thing on?
The nunchuck.
The nunchuck, thank you.
Honestly, I just thought of this. You know what was really cool in Prime 3 Corruption was the grapple lasso. I really liked that. I thought that was so
They
cool
leaned
to, like, yank on
hard
levers,
into motion
pull
controls.
shields off and stuff. It was cool.
Yeah. And that was a nice little cap, and people were wondering what was going to happen next. But first,
It was Brawl. And look at that. There's a new character, kind of. We have Samus and then also Samus in Brawl, which was still very exciting. And turns out, and if you're interested in the competitive stuff, she's one of the best characters in the game. It also, I'm sure it helped that that Prime series did so well, so like, we should put some more Metroid love into Smash. And look, Ridley's in the game. Kind of. Again.
he's kind of big.
Yeah, I think he's too big. I don't
He's
think they're going to put him in. He was actually a boss in the story mode, Subspace Emissary, which, if anyone has played,
I
everyone
love
knows
Subspace
it's
Emissary.
so
incredibly good. Which led to
Oh, yeah.
trilogy.
And then Smash Brothers was over because people wanted to play Metroid Prime again.
Yeah, that's how that worked.
Retro decided to release the whole trilogy. This was all 3 main Prime games on one disc for the Wii. Because it was for the Wii, they backported Corruption's widescreen and motion controls into the first 2 games. It ended up working pretty well for the most part. It also included some bug and exploit fixes, much to the chagrin of sequence breakers, but we still found a way. And it was a really good victory lap for the main Prime games. It was just like hey, Metroid is doing so well, here's all of it. Us Retro Studios probably going to take a break from Metroid for a bit. But surely the golden age of Metroid will continue, right?
Right?
So, Metroid Other M was the next game. This one was another experiment of trying to break the formula, where it was not as universally acclaimed as Metroid Prime was upon release. Included some minimalist controls that people had gotten used to with the Prime games, and even with some of the side-scrollers as well. This time it was a fully voiced cast, so that included Samus this time, as well as added some QuickTime events, which were popular in games at the time. And it was very story-focused, right? It had a fully voiced cast, and it was set between Super Metroid and Metro Fusion, so it still did not continue the story yet at that point. And it was really the first time that a main Metroid game was developed by a third party, this Team Ninja that they collaborated with here. So, this is going to be another show of hands. Please don't yell.
Stay in your seat.
Metroid Other M. Misunderstood, get rid of it for good. Who thinks Metroid Other M is misunderstood? And who would like to get rid of it for good? Okay. What do we think on the panel here?
Oh, I'm not starting this one.
Okay, I'll start it. We'll start on this end. I'm probably under the misunderstood category for here. Yeah, it's far from perfect. It was an experiment, but it's overall still good. I think the main misunderstanding or part of it comes from Samus giving a lot of characterization where previously in Metroid games she had none. So like a Link character, people projected what they wanted on Samus, and it didn't necessarily match up in a lot of cases. What do you guys think?
3D speed boost. That's really cool.
Speed boost felt
That's
really
my
nice.
favorite.
Hard agree.
That's all I have to say. She loves Adam. Why do you guys hate their love?
I really like Diffusion Beam. I think Diffusion Beam was really good.
You just
And
shoot and everything dies. I loved it. Yeah.
honestly, my real only complaints about Other M were the first-person missile thing and
Not moving in first person.
the story gestures wildly.
So
Yeah, I honestly did enjoy it, but I think if it was someone's first Metroid game and then they played something else, they would be pretty confused.
What happened?
It's not a good representation of the
right.
series as a
and
whole.
actually, real quick, running Metroid communities at the time, that Other M was the first game with some younger people because they were coming at the tail end of like Metroid Prime trilogy, where like it was sequels and spin-offs at that point that they.
Yep.
So this was like a new thing. They're like, oh, I'll try Metroid this, and a lot of them liked it from that and became Metroid fans. But it really kind of started or kicked off the second great Metroid drought.
Yeah.
Trademark.
So people needed things to do while there weren't Metroid games coming out.
So people did cosplay. Our Metroid cosplay community founder, Dan Cattell, a lot of you might recognize his work. He's the space pirate pixel guy. He tends to go viral on Reddit a lot with his weird, like, me turn sideways, here's my face covered with cardboard sort of thing. So he started the community in about 2015 or sometime drought era, and just a way for people to express their love for Metroid. He saw other groups like the G.I. Joe cosplay community and the Star Wars cosplay community, and he wanted to make a similar space for Metroid because it's like his favorite thing. So that's how we all sort of got together. He wanted it to be more of a safe space, though. Like, people will share their work on Reddit and get a lot of trash talk and stuff like that.
Especially
so he
at the
wanted a
time,
place for unsolicited criticism. So, like, no matter your experience level, if you just want to throw on a Zero suit and make some accessories, or if you want to do a whole suit of armor, it's just a place for encouragement. I mean, it's how I know everybody in my life now, which is weird.
Pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
It grows up.
Yeah, so that's that.
And speaking,
And I'm done.
Yeah. And speaking of how you know everyone in your life, this game did that for me, as well as
That's two
Metroid.
games.
It's just one game.
Oh,
Actually.
okay.
It's kind of two games.
So Smash 4 came out, and everyone just calls it Smash 4. It's technically Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and or Wii U, but this is where I personally got initially very involved in the competitive Smash scene and started going to tournaments multiple times a week and made a lot of great friends there. So another great Metroid-adjacent community is honestly, Smash. Talk to me after if you're curious. But yeah, so Ridley's in the game again, kind of.
Ish.
He's on a stage hanging out, referencing Other M.
I think he got bigger.
Yeah, I think he did, and there's no way they're going to put him in a game.
No way.
It's not
as a
Way too
playable
big.
character.
Too
and
big.
they also put in Mother Brain and Dark Samus and Metroids, kind of. And that's more or less it. You can see here that, obviously just a dream, but if Dark Samus was ever added to Smash, there'd be all these really cool, unique moves for the character that would totally be there in possible future titles.
Obviously.
But the other thing that came out this time that Nintendo fans were sucking down were Amiibo. This was a wild time. Anyone who was active, I would say, with the Nintendo gaming in 2014, this was the wave. And even just finding some in general was difficult for a while. And then there was the hunt for the defect ones. As you can see on the right there's the normal Amiibo, and then there's the double arm cannon. That one sold for $2,500 on eBay. So people started really looking for this stuff.
A small price to pay for 2 arm cannons. Right? Jeez.
So much power.
So much power.
And so this was, 2014, and suddenly maybe a glimmer of hope, a hint of things to come.
Oh,
We're hanging out hopeful. In 2015, there was a little something called the Nintendo World Championships, and they compiled a series of a tournament with mini games within that tournament to play for people who were competing. And one of them they unveiled was called Blast Ball. And I remember watching this broadcast, being very excited about Nintendo World Championships. And they start showing this new 3DS game called Blast Ball. And I look at that font and I'm like, I think I've seen that before.
Looks familiar.
And then I keep looking and I'm like, that's literally me in the game. What's going on here? And so they said, okay, this is Blast Ball. But then not long after, they said, actually, this is Metroid Prime Blast Ball. And then not long after that, they said, this is actually Metroid Prime Federation Force. It's a whole game.
It is.
Huh?
A game.
This was at best the reaction of most
the
Metroid
collective
fans.
internet reaction to that announcement.
We can't
This
show
meme
what
was
the worst
actually
reaction
made
was.
in the future to describe this exact moment. So Metroid Prime Federation Force came out. The relative premise of the game is that you're playing as a Galactic Federation Marine instead of as Samus, which ever since Halo ODST had come out, I thought that would be a really cool idea. I'm glad that they did it. But it was very confusing to fans because there had been 6 years since this and Other M, and people were hopeful for, is there going to be new, Metroid Prime in the style that we're used to? Is there another 2D game coming? And instead it was kind of this spin-off / chibi art style sort of thing going on. Samus is not playable and instead is a giant ball for a segment of the game.
The ultimate Maru Mari.
And it had co-op play. It was PvE instead of PvP. And I'm just going to say, it was actually really fun.
You played Blast Ball?
I didn't play Blast Ball.
Oh, okay.
I played Federation Force.
He played the game.
I never did Blast Ball once, but Federation Force to me was incredibly fun. And Ed, I didn't say this, but this was actually my introduction to speedrunning.
No kidding.
I solo speedrunned on my
this
own
game?
because there were rewards for beating the levels fast. And so I was like, all right,
The fastest 4 hours of your life.
That's
there's
awesome.
a joke in there. I'm not going to go there. So
It's Panelists rated PG-13.
there was one interesting thing canonically, and if we think back to Metroid Prime Hunters, I showed Silux, the blue and green spiky guy. At the end of the game, a secret ending is you see a big blue spike approaching a Metroid in captivity and hinting at Silux may be involved with some greater story.
And we kind of glossed over it, but actually a similar tease of his ship, which also made its debut in Hunters, was teased in the best ending for Metroid Prime 3 as well. So they really, with that, and then this being the canonical follow-up to that, are kind of teasing Silex to be a player potentially in the future for a potentially game that we've been waiting on for 7 years.
And counting.
Counting. So on the community side around this time, randomizers are starting to take over in a lot of video game communities, actually. You got to give credit to communities like Zelda and Pokemon for sort of starting off randomizers. And it turns out Metroid, because of its progression-based gameplay, actually lent itself really well to randomizers being created for it. And I think at this point, there's a form of randomizer for almost every Metroid game that exists. Some of them are actually pretty mature and have some advanced features like multi-world. We see another screenshot from GDQ there, where you can play Metroid Prime randomized and Metroid Prime 2 randomized, have each other's items shuffled in, and work as a team co-op to sort of beat the game together randomized. So it's pretty fun. There's a lot of little sub-randomizer communities for individual Metroid games out there that you can find, usually linked in like Reddit or social media or speedrun.com. And it's fun. I play a lot myself and really, really like it. But finally, Samus returned in a game called Metroid Samus Returns.
Get it? Let them know when you get it.
This is my smoothest transition by far. It's okay. You don't have to tell me. This was the second remake, Metroid 2. This was the other Metroid game that really needed it, honestly. And it introduced the usual quality of life. This was also the second time that they used a third-party developer to make the game. This was Mercury Steam. They introduced actually a couple new side-scrolling mechanics, and side-scrolling Metroid being countering and Aeon. This was the first game to have those. It was also announced the same day in 2017 that Metroid Prime 4 was announced. So it's been that long since, to be clear, we've been waiting on that game. Pain. So this was kind of just like the sort of just like, okay, Nintendo's really starting to get back into Metroid. Like they're remaking Metroid 2. And it's like, hey, maybe we'll get some good things coming up soon. But first,
Additional evidence of them being interested in Metroid again and showing love for Metroid was this little game called Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
rating pending.
Rating is pending. Ask your mom at least.
They're taking their time.
And this time around, it's Ridley's in the big time. There he is, and Dark Samus. So Ultimate comes out, the trailers, I'm sure most people in this room probably followed all the reveal trailers for the characters. A very exciting thing for anyone who is even just a video game fan. Doesn't even have to be a Nintendo fan, doesn't even have to be a Smash fan. It's just such a pillar of gaming. Very exciting, especially as a Metroid fan. I think I screamed and cried for both reveals.
At the same time.
Yeah, it was a rough day. And yeah, just this was still feels slightly surreal to me because I just spent the majority of my life was thinking like and hoping I wonder if they'll put Ridley in Smash.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, that image that I put there with the four characters going into the game, there were so many, I'm sure most of you remember too, there were so many like fake leaks and things like that if someone had posted that image a year prior, everyone just would have laughed that person off. Like, yeah, all right, they're going to do Dark Samus and Ridley, get out.
Yeah, okay, dude. All right.
And from a competitive standpoint, little side note, this was the first game that Samus could charge her beam in the air, and that was actually a huge improvement for competitive Samus players like myself that honestly changed the game, which led to a new age, you could say, of Metroid. A lot of this was spent waiting for news on Metroid Prime 4, but then one day, a Nintendo Direct happened. And in this Direct... What?
Nothing. Yeah.
Okay. In the Direct, they hit a point where they said, we're still working on Metroid Prime 4, but we have some other news. There's a new Metroid game. And quickly we learned that it wasn't a remake. And then we learned that it was Metroid 5.
Finally.
And then we learned that it was Metroid Dread.
Finally.
And then we learned that it was coming out in like 3 months. And this was the reaction of anyone who was even somewhat attuned to the
This is
Metroid
me, by the way.
series. Yeah. This is actually photography of Elias. And this led to a whole wave of reaction videos, and just like really the internet blew up for a little while with this. We're both in the video.
Yeah, only one of us is in the
However, I'm the only famous one. And we were going to try to get the audio, but it's a little cheeky. This audio that I'm about to play here, too, is actually the same audio that they used from all the prior 2D Start games, too. So, upon booting up, this was just like bliss to hear and watch this and experience it for any Metroid fan.
Especially those of us who are a fan since the literal womb. When I first launched Metroid Dread, that nearly moved me to tears. It was just the waves of nostalgia crashing over. I'm not going to gush about it for as long as I could. We're running low on time. But 19 years later, we finally got Metroid Dread. Mercury Steam iterated on what they did in Samus Returns to an extreme degree. The movement is beyond fluid. It continues the plot of past Fusion. So Samus is Metroid confirmed. Spoilers, we told you we were spoiling. But it's an incredible game. It fills the shoes of that 19-year wait. If you've played it, you know. The title is well earned as well. The dread that you feel going through those Emmy zones the very first time. My first playthrough is up on YouTube. It's a lot. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. Just play the game.
Please play the game.
Your first playthrough, you will die a lot.
So many
And
times.
I even had people DMing me like, am I supposed to be dying this much? Like, am I just terrible at games? Like, no, it's actually pretty hard.
Am I
and you don't
soft lock,
know
or
it.
can I just not figure out where to go?
I did want to say one thing, though,
The
that I
eternal
was...
question. Am I
did want-
soft locked?
I want to say one last thing that I was kind of bummed about. It was around this time that they were teasing the final Smash Ultimate character, and the trailer for Dread came out, and I was like, oh my god, it's going to be Ravenpeak. It's going to be that big Chozo guy. They're going to put him in Smash. And then it was Sora. Fine.
Just Sora.
I mean,
just
Kingdom Hearts fans earned that,
just
but
Disney, just Final Fantasy.
we were hoping.
Speaking of Nintendo Directs, a couple years later, in the middle of it, they're just like, hey, in addition to all these farming sims we're announcing, we're also just going to remake Metroid Prime, by the way, for the Switch. So the best-looking GameCube game suddenly became the best-looking Switch game.
It's beautiful if you haven't
It's
seen
gorgeous.
it. You'll be
looks
surprised
really
that it's running on the Switch.
It maintains all the original gameplay. It's the same game, so it is a remaster, not a remake. But it is super upgraded graphically. It contains all the controls that were in previous iterations of the game, as well as dual analog. They did nerf sequence breaking even further, but it did not stop us. And that, as of now, is the latest release. So now looking ahead, we are still waiting
We're still waiting.
for anything about Metroid 4. The images you see here is literally all we know about the game.
Yep.
We also have heard, things and rumors from some vaguely credible sources that more remasters might be on the horizon.
Which I ain't mad about. Not mad about that.
No, I would not be mad. Echoes and Corruption getting the same treatment. Hunters is a stretch. I will give you that, but who knows, maybe.
It'd be sweet, though.
And then, of course, the big elephant in the room is Metroid 6. At this point, it seems like they should do it, but what would it be? What's the deal with that? We don't know. So, we'll keep this to the panelists. What Metroid game do you guys think will come out next, and on what console? Because Switch is also 7 years old.
Prime 4, Switch, Nintendo, next thing. Whatever
Switch
that
2,
is.
Switch Pro, Switch HD, OLED Pro 2?
Codename whatever the heck.
It's going to be something entirely new, I would think.
Oh, okay.
Either that, or I'm just going to be 90, being like, remember when Metroid Prime 4 was going to
So
come
7
out?
years in the future.
All right,
on-
Grandma.
Let's get you home.
Let's get you home.
Ed?
I'm going to say I really am just hoping for Metroid 6. I'm a fiend for the 2D games. I don't even care what they release it on. I'll buy it because I bought my Switch for Metroid Dread, so whatever.
I suspect that the next thing will probably be the Prime 2 remaster.
Okay.
And I think that's it's kind of a toss-up between if it's on Switch or Switch 2 or whatever it'll be when that comes out. I wouldn't be shocked if it came out this year, though. I think I suspect
Bold.
the rumor of the next Switch will be next year, early next year, so we have like a year to wait. So I think they'll throw a Prime 2 at us in the meantime.
I kind of think similar things. I think Prime 4, even if the next the next console does come out, it'll probably be a dual release. But I do think they'll probably help market it by releasing some remasters of 2 and 3, hopefully separately. Really quickly, though, you wanted to talk about the timeline,
Yeah. So I made
which is a singular line, like some franchises.
It is a
That's
line.
just
I
an
just had
excerpt.
to zoom in a bit. So if you ever wanted a visual of this, this is what the timeline looks like. I made this when Dread came out, and it's still accurate. There's no new canonical stuff going on. There's a remaster. If you say anything about pinball, I'm going to hit you.
Metroid Prime Demastered
Pinball's
is also
canon.
not on the list.
But you can see it starts with Metroid 1, and then it goes through the entire Metroid Prime series. Then it goes to Metroid 2, Metroid 3, Other M, Metroid 4 with Fusion, and then Dread.
Yeah. So very thankful that there's a glimmer of continuity there. All right. We have about 4 minutes to do Q&A. If there are any burning questions you want to ask us or poll the audience, feel free to ask them now. But by and large, we want to thank you guys for coming early during this PAX to the Metroid panel, showing support for Metroid.
Thank you.
We love it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys so much. And please tell PAX you liked us with this QR code. And if there are no questions, then we'll see you guys around. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks.
Feel free to grab us after the.
Not literally.
Speak for yourself.
I, for one.
Thank you.
I thought that